harbor cruise, where ORCA members will be invited. Okay, I need to thank a couple of people and organizations. First off is Shannon's Corner. We are here in Shannon's Corner. Shannon's at the top is the nightclub that we're in right now. Also is the Carvery downstairs, which is an upscale restaurant. In addition, next door to the Carvery is Shannon's Sports Bar. In the basement is Secret Island Tiki Restaurant and Music Lounge. I visited there the other night, and it's an amazing place. If you haven't been there, you need to stop by. And then also in the basement is an FM radio station, KLBP, which is 99.1 on your dial. So you probably didn't realize that right here in this corner there are so many things going on. And if you want to show your appreciation for them giving us this space tonight, please stop by for dinner or drink sometime. Also, I need to thank the Port of Long Beach, who has provided ORCA with a grant that allowed us to pay for all the refreshments you've seen tonight. You know, the free glasses of wine, the food, whatever. You can thank the Port of Long Beach. Okay, let's get started. We have 4 candidates here tonight. We're running for mayor in alphabetical order and going from my far right this direction. Deborah Moser, Susie Price, Rex Richardson, and Franklin Sims. Tonight we have a few rules that we're asking the candidates and also the audience to adhere to. Opening statements will be 4 minutes each. Question and answer period will be 90 seconds maximum for each answer. If they're succinct, more power to them. We appreciate that. But they have up to 90 seconds for each answer. Closing statements will be 2 minutes each. So the formal part of the forum will be from about 7:10 to 8:30, something like that. Timekeeper is Bob Kelton. Raise your hand, Bob. And he is going to have a yellow card for a 15-second warning. So for the candidates, if you're speaking and you see the yellow, that means you've got 16 or 15 seconds, and then you'll have a red card when your time is up. And we'd appreciate everybody adhering to those timelines. That way we can get more questions in during the evening. Please, if one of the candidates wants to rebut a statement from another candidate, we would appreciate it if you save it for your closing statement. This is not a debate. We're not going to be going back and forth. But if somebody says something that you really want to reply to, you will have time in your closing statements to do so. And for the audience, we have question cards floating around. And if you've got a question that you would like to ask the candidates, fill out the card. They will be collected during the early minutes of the the forum, and we will then pass them to our moderator who will ask those questions. All questions cannot be answered. You know, we've got 100+ people here and room for maybe a total of 8, 9, or 10 questions. So many questions will not be answered. If your question is not asked, you can hang on after the forum and talk to the candidates individually. If you've got some burning question that you did not hear about, hopefully the candidates will hang around for a half hour or so, and you can ask them personally. Now I would like to introduce our moderator. Harry Saltzgaber, executive editor of Gazette Newspapers. And that adds gravitas to our forum, executive editor, newspaper, being our moderator. Thank you, Harry, also for putting blurbs about this forum into both the Grenion Gazette and the Press Telegram last week. We appreciated that. That's also a good reason to have a newspaper man as a moderator rather than, say, a bartender. Bartenders might be good, but I don't know if they could give us the additional publicity. Okay, it is now time to start the formal forum. And I'm going to the microphone, Harry Salzgeber.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you. This is the most important thing that we can do as Americans today. And being involved and being informed is the best way to keep our democracy alive. And I think considering everything that's going on in the world today, it's pretty important. And you guys are here, and I appreciate that, and I want to say thank you. Now, the way that we're going to run this is we will start opening statements at the far end, come this direction. Then when we start questions, we'll move one space each time. And then for closing statements, we'll go the opposite direction. Okay? If that works for everybody, I think that's fairly fair. So, here we go. Opening statements first.
Thank you very much, and thank you to ORCA for hosting us here tonight. I know many of you in the room, but for those of you who have not had the opportunity to meet before, I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about myself and my background, which shapes my values and who I am as a person. I was born in the United States, but as a child, my family returned to their homeland of Iran. At the age of 7 years old, my mother and I left the country and came to America, leaving behind my father and 7-year-old sister. We did not see them for 21 years. When my mother and I arrived in America, I learned how to speak English, and she became a public school nurse and worked very hard to buy her first house the year I went to college. My path led me to Cal State Long Beach, where I earned my bachelor's and master's degree in public policy and administration. I even got to serve as student body president, and I even had the opportunity to graduate as the outstanding graduate for the college, which was a huge honor for my mother and I, because for us, that was the American dream. I went on to law school. My first case that I interned on involved a 17-year-old rape victim. That experience led me to a 23-year career fighting for victims of very, very horrific crimes in an environment that's very scary and sometimes incredibly unfamiliar to them. Fighting for those who have no voice has always come very naturally to me. I now serve as a council member. I'm still a prosecutor, and I'm a small business owner here in the city of Long Beach. My path in life has taught me to work hard and to fight for those who traditionally have been outsiders in the process. For the last 8 years, I've had the opportunity to be a constituent serving councilperson in the 3rd District of Long Beach. My motto has always been service over politics, and at times, while fighting for the residents in my district, I have made decisions that have been at odds with those at City Hall, because it's important for me that every single resident has a voice, regardless of their political ideology or their beliefs. I've treated the position in a nonpartisan way. I ran for City Council because the moms in our neighborhood and me and the PTA wanted a crosswalk, and City Hall kept ignoring us and saying that it wasn't feasible. Well, I ran for office and we got the crosswalk, and since then we've built many crosswalks, paved many roads, and taken care of quality of life issues that affect our community. I'm running for mayor because it is time for us to set politics aside and fight for what we all need in this city, which is service from our elected officials. We need elected officials that are solution-oriented and can deliver results. As I go into the community, I will tell you that there are 2 things that consistently come up in every single neighborhood. First, everyone wants to feel safe. Our homicide rate right now in the city of Long Beach is 101% year-to-date higher than last year. That is alarming. The number of gun violence cases that we see are incredibly high and very significant. And so people ask all the time, what about our police department? Well, public safety isn't just about our police department. Sure, that's an important part. As mayor, I would add to our police department because right now we're operating with about 200 less officers, at least, in our city. And that's 200 less officers to be on the patrol, to respond and help solve crimes. But in addition to hiring more police officers to be able to serve as deterrents and solvers of crime, we also need to make sure that we're investing in community trust of our police department and accountability. Very few professions where a mistake by a person can impact the life of another in such a significant way, and that's a huge thing to focus on. Homelessness is another area where every resident in this city is concerned about. We need to scale up our homelessness efforts. We need to have outreach teams in every district working more than just 5 days a week. There are so many things we can do together, and I thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you this evening, and special thanks to ORCA for hosting tonight's forum. I'm Rex Richardson. I'm Long Beach's vice mayor. I love this city, and this is my favorite part of the campaign, getting to know people. I represent an area in North Long Beach, so if I don't know you, would love to get to know you further. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Aside from serving as vice mayor, I'm a husband. I married my wife at the Long Beach Museum of Art down here in Ocean. Held my 2 daughters for the first time in Long Beach Memorial. But I'm not really originally from Long Beach. I was born on Scott Air Force Base in Belleville, Illinois. My father was in the Air Force. My mother was a welder at General Motors in Wentzville, Missouri. We moved around a lot. My mother had Southern roots down in Alabama. I spent some time down in Alabama. That's why I talk the way that I speak today. And we moved to California a few years after my mother and father divorced. I was on a Greyhound bus. That was my mom. It was my younger brother. My sister was a year older than this. We came here looking for the California dream. We had a 2-bedroom apartment. My mom had 1 bedroom. My brother and sister shared a bedroom. So guess what? I ended up on the couch. That's okay. When I was 15, I had an opportunity to get a job. I worked at Jack in the Box, and my mom worked at Arby's. And I do not like to eat Arby's because that's all we had in high school. And my sister worked at the local stationery shop, but we all worked. We all contributed. My job was to contribute by paying the light bill. My sister paid the phone bill. My mom paid the rent, and we made ends meet. Those Southern values came through. She said, always work hard, get an education. No one can ever take it away from you. Things like make sure you learn how to pay for it because money doesn't come easy. It doesn't grow on trees. And so that's what we did. When I was 17, I got a college acceptance letter to attend Cal State Dominguez Hills as a first-generation freshman. And, we moved around a lot, so I was an EOP kid, educational opportunity. That's when maybe you don't meet all the criteria, but you show enough promise in your life to get an opportunity to go to college. So I was an EOP kid. I got there, I got involved, I became student body president just like Councilwoman Price, and it's a great training ground. I met Leon Panetta, who's a great American public servant who inspired me to think about things like public service and leadership and advocacy. I met my wife on campus. She wasn't my wife then, we got married later, I got an opportunity to come to Long Beach when I was a young man and put down roots. And I love this opportunity, the city, for what it provided for me. I bought a home when I was 25 in North Long Beach. It was a great community. I'll tell you from my roots in the South that I believe that community, you have a commitment to your community and to your family. And when I got there, North Long Beach had a lot of proud families like mine, working families, but they didn't have the resources and amenities that they need to thrive. So we were the only district in the city that didn't have a bank. We were the only district in the city that didn't have a library. We were the only district in the city that didn't have a paramedic. We were the only district in the city that didn't have a Starbucks. You can say what you want about commercial coffee, but when you're the only district without corporate coffee, you want some coffee. And so I got involved. When I was 26, I became chief of staff to Councilman Steve Neal. We got to work. We began building neighborhood associations. We went from 4 to 13 neighborhood associations, recruited 50 neighborhood leaders because we feel that City Hall should keep a covenant with all of our residents. But City Hall has a problem being responsive to all of us. And that's the work we did. When I was 31 years old, I was elected to city council, the youngest council member in history. We got to work. We built the Michelle Obama Neighborhood Library. We restored Paramedic Rescue 12, which shaved 3 minutes off our local response times because, that matters. Public safety certainly matters. We restored open space. We brought resources, amenities. We made City Hall show up for North Long Beach. We brought our city council meeting to North Long Beach so they can see our conditions. And I'll tell you, our city is facing challenges right now. We have a crisis in multiple fronts. We're dealing with a pandemic. And what we need right now is proven leadership and a collaborative style of leadership. And that's what I bring forward. So as vice mayor, now that Mayor Garcia is moving on and running for Congress, out of duty, I feel like bringing that spirit of collaboration to our entire city. So I'm Rex Richardson, and thanks for hearing me out today.
Ms. Price, you are the first to answer this question. And of course, it's a very long question. Several hundred Ocean Boulevard residents have their health and safety disturbed almost every weekend from April to October with outdoor entertainment noise levels higher than allowed by the city's noise ordinance. Sometimes for 4 consecutive days, 12 hours each day. So loud that normal conversations, talking on the telephone, and watching television are impossible. Many residents have to leave their homes to escape the city, to escape. The city allows this by issuing a permit that bypasses the noise ordinance. What would you do to alleviate this situation?
Thank you very much for that question. You know, at City Hall, we often talk about how it's important to not treat people with different circumstances differently, and to make sure that every resident, no matter what their circumstances are getting the full advantage of the city government and having their voices heard. Well, I'll tell you, the area that ORCA represents a lot of different living conditions and environments. There may be brand new buildings where there are windows and the building structure is such that you can't hear anything on the outside. And then there may be homes in the International Towers where I was invited to sit in the living room of 2 residents during the last 3-day concert, where with the windows closed, you can feel the glass rattle and you can feel the vibration on the wood floors. The reality is that we have a lot of older builds in downtown and we have a lot of newer builds in downtown. And I think it's important for us to treat the situation in the way that it impacts the most disadvantaged community member in that situation and build from there. Because it's not fair to say, and look, I represent some commercial districts like Belmont Shore. And a lot of times when residents will complain, people will say, well, they knew this when they moved here, they knew there was a bar here. Well, that's really not a fair response for the city to have. What we can do, what we've started doing, and I did it on this last concert, which was a 3-day concert, is we need to work more directly with special events, reroute the speakers, have less stages, and use the Queen Mary parking lot for a lot of those big scale events.
Thank you.
Thank you. We only get 90 seconds, so I'll speak quickly on this. I think it's very similar to many of the issues we've had in North Long Beach when we had too many liquor stores, nuisances. It came down to land use. Our noise ordinance hasn't been materially updated since the 70s. Our Ocean Boulevard looks very differently than it did in the 70s. Our noise element in our general plan has not been updated. It's supposed to come back in front of City Council. Outreach had not been done. How can we expect that our city to be responsive and have a modern solution to the problems when we haven't updated our policies for our city of today? That's very similar to what we did in North Long Beach. We said, hey, we need to update some things. We went to the city to say, okay, we'll update your zoning, we'll address your issues after we finish downtown plan, CDIP plan, midtown plan. Great, how long is that? They said 10 years. People can't wait 10 years. It's too late. We need our noise element updated. We need to start by getting input from those people most impacted to make sure our policies that guide every decision we make, from special events to the businesses that are located around us, it's all guided by our general plan and our zoning and updated. It hasn't been updated materially and comprehensively since the 70s. That's unacceptable. As mayor, I'm going to take what I learned as a council member and apply it. The city needs to update their standards to make sure that residents in every neighborhood, including on Ocean Avenue, Ocean Boulevard, have the responsiveness, the planning, and that all of us are organized in a way to protect our quality of life. So I would update our noise element, and I would update our noise ordinance. That's what I would do.
Thank you. Move on to question number 2. Mr. Richardson, you will start us, please. Excuse me. The city has been told to and plans to build 28,000 new homes, plus those already approved. What about infrastructure? We already have a water shortage, electricity brownouts and blackouts, insufficient parking. How will you provide the infrastructure for the these additional homes?
Well, a few things. One, we need to address our tax code in the state. How is it the state has a $90 billion surplus and every major city has a deficit? It prioritizes building shopping malls and car dealerships instead of prioritizing building housing. It doesn't help cities. It's an emerging conversation. I know because I'm at the table as the immediate past president of Southern California Association of Governments. So first, we have to address and be aggressive with the state about the tax code. Secondly, like infrastructure is certainly important. That means we need to grow our revenue. If you look, we passed out our economic plan, right? We rolled out our economic plan today, which is about maximize our revenue so we can provide better services for everyone. That means we need more than just a few parts of town doing all the heavy lifting with property tax and sales tax. We need to make sure downtown, uptown, east, west, central are all contributing to the bottom line so we have more services and revenue to provide the things that people care about, which is, again, infrastructure, and streets, and staffing, and quality services. We also do have impact fees and things associated with development that do offset some of those costs. We need to make sure that we stop giving so many breaks to attract development without getting the things that we need to make sure that we pay for those things, the parks and open space and the infrastructure. So there are things we need to do. Bottom line, we just have to prioritize our own economic growth. You can see my economic plan on joinrexrichardson.com/economic recovery, because 90 seconds is not enough time to talk about the complex issue. But I would invest in our economy. I would engage in our state because we don't have an equitable tax code that prioritizes growth. Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you, and I'm not sure if I heard the question wrong, but I think your question was different than what the answers have been, and it was, how are we going to allow for the adequate infrastructure with the new growth? And the answer to that question is this. Every single project that gets approved at City Hall has to go through an environmental analysis. Every infrastructure or utility that's associated with that project as part of that has to make an attestation that the resources will be there to accommodate not the present growth, but the future growth. We've had multiple cities that have actually run out of water on future projects because they didn't adequately plan for the infrastructure needs of that development. The City of Long Beach has a very robust process to make sure water department, power, everything has to have an attestation before the project is approved. Now, what you're really asking is not about water or power, because we can accommodate that with AES and our water department. What you're asking about really is parking. That's the biggest issue that comes up, is how are we adequately addressing parking with the additional growth? Parking of today, the way these projects get approved is with a futuristic model of what the reliance on cars is going to be, not tomorrow, but 20 years from now. And there's all sorts of data out there. Trust me, I did not believe 7 or 8 years ago, but we are moving as a society into a situation where people aren't going to have individual cars. The patterns in the future are going to be more rideshare, like an extended Uber, more reliance on mixed-use development so that people can walk to places. Every development is going to have that factored in. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Singh, you get your question started. Are you in favor of having more police officers? How many? And real officers, not vacant positions. Ms. Price.
Absolutely. I've been advocating for more police officers since way before. The truth is, and the facts are, that police presence and the ability to respond quickly to crimes is a deterrent. We are down over 200 officers, but really it's more than that. Because over the last 5 years, we've dedicated over 100 police officers to extra duties like the port, the Metro line, and these have taken positions away from our patrol force. We definitely need more patrol officers on the streets having a presence. But we also need to invest in things like community trust and training and best practices and culture development, because that's important. And we also need to make sure that we have a balanced approach where we're investing in early intervention and programming and mentorships to get people off of that criminal justice pathway to begin with. Public safety is not an issue just about the police department, but we absolutely need more police officers. What we are asking them to do right now is the impossible. They are stretched so thin. And I'm proud to have been the council member that brought forth the item to restore our helicopter unit, because our helicopter unit is the most effective way, in my opinion, to compensate for under patrol staffing. If we don't have enough patrol officers on the streets, then we need our helicopter teams to be up in the air because they can cover a lot of ground from the air, and that's what we need, and I'm proud to have supported that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that Long Beach deserves the best city in America and the best police department in America. And so absolutely we need to make sure we invest in staffing. But to create a truly safe community, we have to think comprehensively about what that means and what that looks like. I'll tell you, the 2 days after my second daughter was born, I was driving up Long Beach Boulevard to my neighborhood from Long Beach Memorial. Our neighborhood was quarantined off with the SWAT team. There was a homicide in a local motel. They went door by door. I checked my security cameras. 5 Long Beach SWAT team in my backyard. It was scary. It was a very scary moment. But the question that I asked after I was afraid and angry, the question I asked is how much resources did it take to quarantine off the whole neighborhood? Then I looked into that hotel. 1,100 calls for service in 1 year. How much money did it cost to go after that? Respond to 1,100 calls for service. We need to have a modern police department and have a modern plan to make sure that our land use is updated. If we had bought that motel or rezoned that motel before those 1,100 calls for services, there'd be more pie to go around to respond to residents. There's a lot in downtown and uptown that needs to be updated so we have comprehensive safety. My residents in North Long Beach, when they talk about safety, yes, they want the same things everyone else does. Someone to show up and respond. That's why we reduced our response times in the fire department and paramedics by 3 minutes, but they also want parks, libraries, better lighting, a safe neighborhood. They want to address homelessness. They want to address all the issues that create a safe community. And so as mayor, I'm going to think comprehensively about public safety and what that actually means to the people on the ground. So yes, I'm going to invest in our police department, but also all the departments that make a difference as it relates to community safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the first 3 questions came from the ORCA board. The rest of the questions will come from the audience. Notice I said the audience, the board, not me. Okay, I'll give my questions later. Okay, and the most common question in the audience was regarding homelessness. Really? What is your plan to address the situation? We'll start down at the other end.
There are 2 simple ways that we can dramatically reduce the number of homeless people we have living on the street right now. People experiencing homelessness right now are not getting the benefit of a robust, consistent street outreach program. I work in my current day job on all of our collaborative courts, our mental health, and our street outreach programs at the district attorney's office. And I'll tell you, the #1 effective way to get people into voluntary service is through consistent street outreach teams. Consistent street outreach teams show up to the same place for 2 weeks. They interact with the same people day after day to build that credibility and trust based on respect and dignity to get people to accept a service. We don't have that right now. Our homeless outreach teams work from 7:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. So if you're homeless after 5 or on the weekends, you're out of luck. Once our homeless teams get out there, if they do make contact with a person, what they're offering them is to come to the multi-service center, where sometimes they have to wait 3 or 4 hours to be seen. We don't have the actual services available right now. I've gone on tons of homeless ride-alongs. Today I went to see a pallet community. What we need to be able to do is to leverage our partners throughout the region to establish actual brick and mortar shops here in the city of Long Beach to provide rehabilitation and treatment. We need to invest in pallet housing so that when people are taken out of the parks, the beaches, and in front of businesses, they're taken to a pallet community where there are services and there's security for them. And sleeping in the beach, sleeping in the parks and in front of businesses is unacceptable, and we cannot allow that to continue.
Thank you. This is an incredibly important issue. I'm proud to have a proven track record of delivering on this issue. We need to develop our local capacity to deal with it. The county, the state, the federal government won't save us on this. We need to expand our shelter capacity. I was proud to build our city's first municipal homeless shelter in partnership with our residents in North Long Beach, the Land Bridge community. It has capacity to help 125 families every day. The second thing that we need to do is we need to make sure to have localized plans. What's the plan for homelessness in downtown? There isn't one. We need to make sure that we have our city's outreach layered together with the business district outreach, local community support, where are the assets in the community all coordinated together. Guess what? It means, yeah, we need to expand our outreach teams, but it may not be 1 per district. It may say, hey, we need 2 teams along the river, or we may need 3 downtown, wherever the needs are. The other thing that we need to do is localize mental health. I'm leading a discussion in at City Council right now about, right now we have our own health department. It's fortunate that we do, but 50% of chronic homelessness are dealing with mental health, substance abuse, behavioral health issues. And so that's LA County Department of Mental Health. So I brought our hospitals together, Cal State Long Beach together. We funded a study at City Council, and I'm leading this effort now to see if we broke some certain services away and had local control, what would that look like? Well, guess what? That's not the only model out there. Pomona does this, Claremont does this, Laverne does this. This is something we can explore here. So they won't save us. We have to develop our local capacity to have a local plan, which today, there is no local plan for homelessness in downtown.
Thank you. What would you do differently than our current mayor, Ms. Price?
Well, I appreciate a lot of the great work that not only our current mayor, but Bob Foster and Beverly O'Neill, both mentors to me, have done in this city. And I think as mayor, I would build upon the things that they've done to make positive impacts on our city. And although I love our current mayor, I really do. He's a great personality, and I do enjoy him. I've known him for over 30 years, talking to him about things, and his view of the world is so positive. I think we're very different in one very specific way. I really believe that as mayor, it will be important for me to do what is right, and sometimes that requires a lot of conflict, and sometimes that requires having to really engage early. Our mayor has been great in bringing the city together, but I think in the area of constituent services and dialogue, one of the things that I've done on council that I will bring to city council every Tuesday night, and I will bring to City Hall as mayor, is this focus on constituent service. I did my master's thesis on what would happen if cities ran the city like businesses run businesses, and had citizen satisfaction surveys, just like businesses have business surveys. And I don't think we've done enough of that. I don't think we have engaged the residents enough about what is it that you want, what are the quality of life issues that are important to you, and what are the core services that we need to focus on. And I think it's a very brass tacks focus that I will do differently than the mayor in terms of delivering services to residents.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll tell you, I've been on city council for just as long as Councilwoman Price, and the challenges of the future are very, very different than we have now, so we're gonna have a different approach. We've seen 1,300 of our residents who've lost their lives during the pandemic. That pandemic has impacted every one of us, but there are folks who make under $80,000 a year whose families are affected by rising cost of gas prices, rising cost of housing, and all of those issues that impact poor families more, which happen to be the majority of the people who live in our city. And so I'll take some things that we've learned from mayors in the past, like I love the Long Beach College Promise, how we all work together in partnership to make sure that students have access to college. Well, I'm gonna propose a Long Beach housing promise that works very similarly. Instead of the city taking on all the burden, we need to make sure that our educational institutions, our colleges, our Long Beach Unified are also working hand in hand with us to ensure that the housing that's built in our city, students on free and reduced lunch get access to that housing as well. First access to that housing. What does that mean? It means better educational outcomes, it means better graduation rates, all the things that help support our city. So we have to think more comprehensively because the role of local government is changing. Grandma's Long Beach didn't have to pick up 5,000 mattresses a year or all these additional things. And so we're going to have a different set of priorities. My number one priority will be to address the rising cost of housing and homelessness in our community on day one by localizing mental health and expanding capacity. My homeless plan comes out Thursday. Go to joinrexrichardson.com and you'll be able to see our homelessness and housing plan because my time is up. Thanks.
Next question, Ms. Mosier mentioned it. What should we do about the Queen Mary?
I gotta go first on this one?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so look, I'm a collaborative leader. That's what I do. We got done what we need to get done in North Long Beach was by working together on the Queen Mary, and we'll probably take the same approach. I think we have to look at the Queen Mary as an asset. I think it's an economic imperative that we don't make the decision of spending $100 to $150 million to sink the Queen without trying to figure out what makes sense when $100 to $150 million, that debt will be passed on to our children. So we have to be smart and look at this as an economic imperative for us to get it right, but it starts with collaboration. We're gonna have to make sure that we restore the public trust And the people, there needs to be peer review. There needs to be transparency in the process. Let's put the plan together and put some sunshine to it so people can comment on the plan for the Queen Mary, and then we move forward. When I go to, Hotel Maya, and I don't, food is okay. No, I don't really go for food. I go for that beautiful view, looking back on the hundreds of millions of dollars, and your home's on Ocean. I look back on that beautiful skyline. And guess what? There's so much opportunity to look back on our own skyline that we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars on. And so we have to figure out what happens so that we can, have a more economically viable future. Because the way local government, pays for itself is through sales tax and transit occupancy tax and property tax. And so we have to look at the opportunity that presents ourselves, particularly when we see that revenues are going away. The end of oil, other things that are happening in the next 10 to 15 years is an economic imperative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So a couple of things. I was the only council member to vote against giving $23 million to Urban Commons to run the emergency repairs on the Queen Mary. To me, the deal didn't make sense. And I tried to say that, but I'm one of 9 votes. And what I tried to say is, if there's $200 million in repairs and they need $23 million from us to do the work, that's a signal to me that we're probably not dealing with a partner that's coming from a place of strength. And the truth is, they were a bunch of fraudsters. It wasn't the contract that was the problem, it was the people we were negotiating with. They ended up lying on the Singapore Stock Exchange and misrepresenting the value of the Queen Mary to boost their portfolio, and they did us over. And we lost millions of dollars. Moving forward, the Queen Mary, the value of the Queen Mary right now, its history is a beautiful part of this city. And it is worth evaluating every single option. But if we're going to spend $250, which really now it's going to be closer to $500 million to save that ship, not to restore to make it beautiful, but just to save it, we're going to have to talk to the public if we're going to spend public monies. We should not spend that kind of money from the public without going to a vote of the public, because that is way too much money to spend. But what we should be looking at is public-private partnerships that take advantage of the 43 acres of undeveloped land along the coastline that Long Beach is unique to have in the state of California, and figuring out how we monetize Pier H with partnership with the port and other developers. And I'm in the process of those discussions now and look forward to having them on my transition team. Thank you.
Next question is sort of related a little bit. How do you plan on balancing downtown residential needs and wants to those of the tourists that make up so much of our economy downtown? Ms. Price.
Thank you. So I have the privilege to represent a part of the city that has a lot of tourist activity. If you look at the scooter rentals, the bike rentals, the short-term rentals, and the active business corridors, a lot of those are in the district that I represent. And I know that I do have some of my residents here today, and hopefully they'll stand around afterwards and talk with you a little bit about how I address those kinds of issues in my community. I'm super hands-on about the quality of life impacts to my residents. That's always at the forefront of everything that I do. And a lot of times you have to say no to things that will be economically viable for the city if the quality of life impact is going to be too great for your resident. It's simply too much to ask residents to bear the burden of day after day of inconvenience and disruption of their quality of life. It's like chalkboard, fingers on a chalkboard. It's really hard to ask people to do that day after day. So one of the things that we really focus on in the 3rd District in terms of our quality of life issues is we talk about what time our events ending. We want to make sure they're ending at a reasonable time so they're not disruptive to residents. We want to talk about parking plans. There's got to be parking plans so that residents are not further having to be disrupted by parking and those kinds of impacts. We need to talk about noise impacts. We need to talk about the types of events that we're bringing to the neighborhood. Do they fit that neighborhood? Anytime we're using public space or public lands, whether it's for filming or tourist attraction, we need to talk about how's that going to impact residents' ability to do that. Quality of life is the #1 issue.
Thank you.
Well, I would start by collaboration. I have a collaborative leadership style. I think people need to understand that we're all interconnected. When the downtown closed due to the pandemic, everyone's services citywide were furloughed. It wasn't just the localized impact. We felt it across the whole city. So it's an economic imperative to our whole city that we strike that balance and figure it out here on the ground. I typically start by finding where our interests intersect and making sure everyone has a seat at the table. What does that look like? There's a company called I Trust Capital that was looking at locating on Pine and 4th Street, 9,000 square feet. And these were high-wage jobs, and they say, we need more space. We're gonna go to 50,000 square feet on Ocean in the Union Bank building. And there was a car accident where someone was hurt right in front of a meeting, and then there was a stabbing incident. And they said, we're gonna go to Irvine because downtown Long Beach is a little too stabby. Well, guess what? We lost out economically as a city, but everything I just mentioned was your neighborhood. All of those things happen here in neighborhoods. So it's in all of our economic interests and our interests as residents to make sure we prioritize your quality of life. We need a homelessness plan downtown that layers our business district strategy with our city's outreach strategy and our local resources to make sure that it's managed better. Public safety, homelessness, all these things need to be managed better because it's an economic priority and it's essential to our city's economic progress. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, and I do want to give everyone their full 2 minutes. So I'm going to ask you to start with your closing statements, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come in and speak with you today and to meet you. I'm going to be a mayor that focuses on the big challenges. My history is being a collaborative leader, and you can see my track record of results. We had, not a lot going on in North Long Beach and more problems than most. And I will tell you, it was by working together. The challenges ahead are great. We can't solve homelessness without working together with our regional partners. I'm proud that Supervisor Janice Hahn, Chair of the County Board of Supervisors Tyler Mitchell, and Hilda Sleece have endorsed my campaign. We're going to work together on homelessness as a top priority. I'm proud to have support from the majority of the school board and college board because education is going to be incredibly key. The mayor's job, the mayor doesn't have a vote. The mayor is successful by working together with others. Homelessness will be my top priority. We got to get our unhoused neighbors off the street. We have to make sure that get our economy back on track in a way that no neighborhood is left behind. And we need to make sure that we prioritize quality of life and public safety in our communities. The way forward is by working together. I'm proud to have the support of the majority of our city council, school board, college board. We're ready to serve on day one, and I'll be honored and humbled to continue service in the city of Long Beach by making a meaningful difference in everyone's lives. Thank you so much.
So thank you for having us here tonight. I think I've proven in my time as a council member that to me the goal of leadership is about service and not politics. I've been a public servant my entire life. I have not spent my career in politics as some have. And while I understand the need to want to change and want to have a difference, I think what you want is a viable candidate for mayor who also has the independence and the ability to think freely about what's important to all of you. I've done great work in my district for the last 8 years, working hand in hand with residents to build amazing new playgrounds and opportunities for people to engage as a community, to restore environmental habitats like the Colorado Lagoon and the Los Cerritos wetlands. We've had amazing success together, working collaboratively. But please, when you hear the word collaboration, please don't confuse that word with politics and being a good politician. Don't confuse leadership with politics. Very, very different thing. I've been very, very honored to have the support of residents. I've had my staff with me for over 7 years. I work closely with city staff on finding solutions and delivering results. The only endorsement, I know everybody here has endorsements, but the only endorsement that means anything to me is yours. Building trust with you and letting you know that as your next mayor, you will always have access to me. I will always find opportunities to make sure that you're at the table early before the agenda item is there and the 5 votes have been counted. And I know that there's a lot of assumptions and implications that are made when people talk about endorsements, but I'll tell you, I've sat with every single member of our city council. I did so before I announced that I was running for office. And while I won't share with you the details of those individual conversations, I can tell you that if it's an issue of trust, I have their trust and I have their respect. And I look forward to working with all of them as your next mayor. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think you all know that one of the hardest things there is to do in America is run for office, whether it's the dog catcher or President of the United States. So I would ask you to give these 4 people a round of applause for their